And welcome to the big picture. After months of uncertainty and opposition, the Kudankulam nuclear power plant is on the verge of being operationalized with the proposed loading of enriched uranium in the reactor. However, the opponents of the twin 1000-megawatt reactors laid siege to the area today, leading to police firing, killing a fisherman, apart from lathi charge and tear gassing of hundreds of protesters. The action and drama today on the seashore close to the power plant has once again brought into focus the debate on the safety of nuclear power plants. While the government has been insisting that the plant posed no risk to life or environment, the protesters and opponents continue to take a contrary view. Now with the plant ready for the fueling of the first reactor, will these protests die down and will the plant finally start producing the badly needed power? Or should the government take some more time to convince the protesters? The first unit of this joint Indo-Russian venture, which was scheduled for commissioning in December last year, is already behind schedule by 9 months. What will be the impact of any further delays? How should the government approach the problem now? We will discuss all this while looking at the incidents in Kudankulam today and why the protests are continuing, and ask the larger question, how the issue of nuclear power plants need to be handled in the light of concerns expressed against them. To discuss this, I have with me today Professor R. Rajaraman, Emeritus Professor of Theoretical Physics, JNU, Nikhil Dey, a well-known activist and member, Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, and on the phone line from Chennai is G.C. Shekhar, Associate Editor of the Telegraph newspaper. Welcome to all of you. Let me first go to Shekhar. Shekhar, today it seems to have taken a violent turn. You know, all these days these protests were quite peaceful. Why and how did this happen?
I think it's a sign of desperation by the protesters because all hurdles towards the commissioning of the plant have been removed.
Right.
The High Court dismissed their petition because they challenged the environmental clearance given to the plant. So they didn't have any more legal ammunition. So what the protesters did is that they were trying to lay siege to the plant from the seashore side,
right.
And then try maybe with the plan to storm the plant at a later stage. Okay,
right.
the police got wind of it and they sort of cordoned off that area.
Right.
And in the morning they decided to clear the seashore of the protesters. And to the credit of the police, they used very minimum force in Kudankulam. Okay, they even left their arms behind because they didn't want even any accidental firing. They used only tear gas and lathi charge.
But it happened. The firing seems to have happened.
No, the firing happened elsewhere. The firing happened in Tirutchendur, while fishermen there were protesting against the morning lathi charge. Okay.
Okay.
When they tried to storm a police station and attack the policemen, they opened fire in self-defense. So it happened elsewhere. It didn't happen in Kudankulam. In fact, it happened quite a few hours after the morning protesters were lathi charged and dispersed from the seashore. So
right.
It was a sympathetic protest that was happening in and around Kudankulam, and one of those protests turned violent. That is what happened.
Okay. Nikhil, coming to you, you know, all these days the protests were pretty peaceful, but now that the protests have turned violent and, you know, it has reached a stage where a person has also been killed in the police firing, do you think the nature of the protests and this kind of a violent nature of protests will prove to be a disadvantage to those who have been opposing this project?
I think it's a real irony to call what has been happening in Kudankulam violent in any form at all, and to call what happened today violence from the side of the protesters. The protesters have been saying for months
right.
that we do not agree with what is being done. You cannot unload and load nuclear fuel and load a nuclear plant upon a local population that is not willing to have it.
Right.
Now, if you say that at any cost we will load it, then people have no choice but to come and surround that area and say we do not want this kind of potentially damaging and dangerous form of nuclear energy to be produced in our area, in our backyard, amongst in the places where we live. And they have not done it with any kind of violence, they have not done it with arms, they have not done it with anything else except their own bodies, saying that we are there to try and prevent this from happening, and saying that all the things that need to be met, the norms that need to be met, have not been met. And there are many, today around the world, places where these nuclear plants have been there, they are being shut down. Today, in terms of producing viable energy, they are saying that we don't want this kind of energy. And so I don't understand how the rest of the country can decide that because we want energy and we want a particular lifestyle, everyone else will have to suffer the consequences of it. People try and put that kind of nuclear plant tomorrow in Delhi and you see what kind of reaction you'll get. These are people who have consistently kept to a peaceful mode. Even today they were peaceful. They were thrown into the sea by whom? By tear gas. Tear gas the people did not use.
Right.
Tear gas the police used. So how can we say that they have been indulging in violence? Right. In fact, we think that yes, the people who are there, the government should not use any kind of force and should continue to dialogue with the people.
Nikhil, the issue is, people say today also the Home Minister of the country has again repeated what the Prime Minister had said the other day, a couple of months back, about, they have raised serious concerns about the NGOs who are heading these agitations. Today, the Home Minister has again repeated that these NGOs are funded from abroad. There is a vested interest among those funding agencies. What do you have to say to this?
This is a completely incredible argument. The fact is that the whole nuclear argument is fueled by a foreign-funded, entirely commercial establishment. We had a situation where foreign countries, people were negotiating with our members of parliament to try and get certain nuclear issues pushed through. We have a situation where you can see for yourselves who are the people who are protesting. They are local villagers. How the Home Minister and Prime Minister of the country thinks that some foreign funding minor NGO can lead to kinds of sustained protests that have been going on there. And it is an insult to the people of the country and of that area who have legitimate concerns. The nuclear question is not some kind of sinister thing. If there is any foreign force, it is of the corporations, it is of the companies, it is of foreign governments who want to reach these nuclear deals with India. And local people will continue to raise questions. You can never have development over the cost of the legitimate questions of local people, and branding them foreign people is completely foreign, motivated by foreign interests, is an insult. You may agree or not agree with their questions. You may say that this is a completely safe form of energy, but their questions are legitimate, their questions are based on history, their questions are based on their own area. It is completely wrong to try and say this is some kind of foreign hand.
Okay. Let me bring in Professor Rajaraman. Meanwhile, we are also joined by P.K. Sundaram, a research consultant in the JNU. Welcome, Sundaram. Let me come to Professor Rajaraman. Professor Rajaraman, one of the points raised by Nikhil Dey is that the norms have not been met and still this fueling, loading of the uranium is going to take place.
Well, let me just, because it's such an emotive issue.
Yes.
Let me first say that I know many of the people who are not directly involved in the Kudankulam protests, people who intellectually support them around the world.
Right.
They are some of the finest people I know.
Yes.
They are genuine, they are sensitive. But I believe that they are misinformed. Their scientific information is not just wrong by a little bit, completely way off. Anybody who says nuclear energy is 100% safe is of course talking through his hat, because nothing is 100% safe.
Right.
But it is more or less as safe and much safer than many other technologies that we live with. As it turns out, it is a lot safer than what happened in Bhopal, which was a chemical technology.
Yes.
We don't ban all chemical industries in India. We don't even ban the next factory which is like Bhopal, because modern world unfortunately takes along a great deal of risk with it. By those standards, I consider this to be relatively less risky.
Okay.
It's a technical evaluation.
Okay.
In support of that also, in ways that people can understand, let us remember that in Bombay, in Trombay, there have been reactors all these years.
Absolutely.
It's not in Delhi, but it's in Bombay. Second thing. Third thing, it's not the poor who go and work in these reactors. All these top scientists and administrators wearing ties and suits go in every day into those reactors in Tarapur.
So are you trying to say that they are risking their lives?
No,
every
they
day?
are not either. They wouldn't do it. They're smart. They are supposedly the elite. They go in and they come out. They have no fears. Nothing has happened to them. Here and there are odd things that will happen. You have to somehow extract that out of the background of other human disabilities, cancers, to see if it is due to this.
Professor Rajaraman, on this issue, the Kudankulam is a Russian reactor. It is said that this is not, fully tested, and there are opinion within the scientific community also that why should we go in for a untested, unreliable foreign reactor when we could have built our own reactors?
Well, there are two answers to that. One is that we didn't. And the reasons for that are very long. Sanctions, finally the Indo-US deal.
So we managed to build our own reactors during all that time.
We did, but at a very, very slow rate.
Right.
Now the point is that if forget about GDP and the desires of the urban air condition owners.
Right.
Our country has still, depending on how you count, 100,000 villages which have no electricity.
Right.
The poorest of poor live there. The streets are dark. It's dangerous for the women. Inside the houses there is no light. People, women breathe that coal with which they cook. So any number of indirect health issues, including death, which happens in hospitals when the power breaks down in the middle of an operation in a small town. So these are all deaths. Are we going to count all of them? On the other side, you should. So the need for electricity in this country is very, very strong. And people's aspirations of wanting to use electricity has gone up. It is true that a particular village is agitated. I sympathize with their strength of their feelings. But it's not true that the rest of the country also wants it to stop. They want the electricity. Sure, they want it in your backyard. This is a standard political problem all over the world. We have to be solved politically.
We have to be solved. Anyway, Sundaram, professor's argument is that we need power, and he says that the risk, you have to take a risk in everything, but this is the minimal risk which we are taking.
There are basically three things. On this risk, I would like to say that it's not just about theoretical risk in chemical technology versus nuclear technology and others. Nuclear energy in this country has been, the entire industry has been operating in manners which are really unsafe, and this has been brought out by the CAG's recent report. This has been brought out very prominently by the Parliament's own standing committee and its committee on subsidiary legislation, which recently said that the entire nuclear liability question, nuclear liability rules that the government brought in were actually undermining the Act itself. So that is one. The
issue of nuclear liability is a separate issue.
I'm saying yes. These are government's own bodies which have raised very serious questions on how the nuclear industry operates in this country. So it's not about some theoretical question about which technology is safer and which technology is not. That is one. B, in Kudankulam, people have raised serious objections to the vulnerability of the project because of the there is a breach of contract in the reactor design itself. The container vessel in the initial agreement, it was promised something else. There's weld in the reactors. There are the questions relating to geology of the area. There are questions related even to nuclear liability of the Kudankulam, because in the intergovernmental.
Let me get Professor Rajaraman in. Yeah. All the points raised by Sundaram here. How would you?
Well, liability is a very interesting question, but I think we should
keep that aside.
Because it becomes very long.
Yes.
So as far as the welding joints, and so I've read those things. I'll tell you that I am a nuclear physicist with 50 years experience. I'm not in a position to judge whether the fact that the weldings were subsequently changed is a threat or an improvement. These reactors have been adjusted to the Indian conditions, Indian requirements. They are based on a previous Russian design. Any change in a reactor can be called as an untested reactor. The Ariva in Jaitapur, a related issue, is also considered untested. They say, sure, it's untested. It's the best reactor in the world.
That's why there is a problem in Jetapur also.
That's right, exactly. But untested doesn't mean it's ab initio untested.
So there have been problems on the EPR in Finland.
Yeah, I know.
These regulatory bodies have raised important objections to it.
Now, his point is right. In Finland, there have been problems with that same reactor. It's become very expensive because the Finnish are extremely touchy about safety as we are. But they are going ahead with it. All that this delay has meant is more cost. And it is true it's a new reactor, but new reactors are not completely new ab initio. They are new only in certain improvements. The basic structure and safety features are all built on earlier experience.
Okay.
So untested is strictly speaking true, but it's the kind of innuendo which is not valid.
Okay. We will continue this discussion. We need to go into a short break now. All of you, please stay back. We'll come back very soon and continue this very interesting discussion. Welcome back. We are discussing the Kudankulam nuclear power plant and the incidents which has happened there today, and also asking the question why this problem has not been resolved yet. Let me go to Shekhar back. Shekhar, you heard the argument and counter arguments on the technicalities of the matter here.
Yeah.
And we have seen in Kudankulam and surrounding areas also, these protests have been going on for months and even more than a year. What I'm asking, what I want to know is, at the ground level, when you have traveled there, you have met people, do you think that these issues have been explained to them and still they are not able to understand, or these issues have not been explained to them properly?
There have been many attempts by the government, by the plant authorities to reach out and explain to them.
Right.
And the state government also appointed an expert committee,
right,
which the conveners of this protest movement attended.
Right.
And the expert committee then cleared the plant, saying that it is quite safe, and similar plants, Russian design plants, have been working in Russia for more than 10 years now. In fact, these people try to say that the protesters try to say that it was a Chernobyl-like plant, but Chernobyl plant was erected in 1970.
Right.
Okay, when nuclear technology was still quite primitive.
Right.
And also the plant experts here, people who have worked here, have said that there are 6 stages of protection that they have given. Okay. In case of an emergency shutdown or anything, what are the steps? How we have plants are much more safer than any of the plants anywhere in the world, because they have refined after the Fukushima. They have added some more safety elements. They have added an extra generator, for example, to cool the plant and do everything. So, and they have ensured that this generator will have its own power supply. It will have its own. It will be on an elevated platform. It will have water sealant rooms. Everything they have designed. They changed a lot of plants after Fukushima, and they've made it much more safer. In fact, I visited the plant for a whole day. I was right inside into its belly and out. So I agree. Another thing what has happened is these villagers have been held captive by a very small group of activists. Okay.
Okay.
Who have virtually brainwashed them over the last 1 year.
Shekhar, when you say that a small group of people, a small group of activists have been brainwashing them, does it also indicate the inability of the government machinery with so many experts and of not being able to convince them? If they have just been held hostage by a small group of people?
Only if the government officials get an audience with the villagers, they'll be able to convince them. Is it not? Whenever they have tried to, any attempt to meet them, any attempt to reach out to them has been thwarted by this small group. There's a very core group which is very, very,
What do you think, Shekhar, what do you think is the motive behind this this small group of people.
I don't see motive. I think these people are blinded, they have very blind in their opposition to nuclear power. Other than that, I don't see anything more. I don't see any other motive. There are some people who think that certain things are bad for the country. So these people are very rabid in their opposition towards nuclear energy. As simple as that.
Okay.
That is what I think. And another factor I would like to inform you is that I live 100 kilometers away from Kalpakkam nuclear power plant. I have visited the power plant so many times. My relatives have worked there for 30 years. They have retired. They have children. Their children have children. So this question of children deformed children will be born in villages around nuclear plants is all bunkum. Okay. These people have worked in the heart of nuclear plants. Their radiation was just around 100 meters away from them. Okay. They used enough protection around them. They ensured there was enough safeguards and safety measures adopted. And these people have children, have grandchildren.
Okay, Shekhar, I think you have made a very forceful point there. Nikhil, see, this GC Shekhar, a journalist who doesn't have any, he is not motivated either way. His argument, how do you counter that argument? Do you think this is the larger issue, as Shekhar was pointing out, that the larger issue of people not in favor of nuclear energy? It is not something particular to Kudankulam. It is a question of a clash of ideas. Some people think that nuclear power is not good. Some people think it's good. Is that what this whole thing is about?
Yeah, there is a clash of ideas. There's no question about it. It is also a political question. There's no question about it.
Right.
The question is, but if you look at the larger politics of it, here are large numbers of people living in a particular area. How they can be considered captive of a small group of activists is beyond me. It is an insult to their intelligence. They are asking very legitimate questions. And the fact maybe around Kalpakkam everyone is happy with Kalpakkam. I live in Rajasthan and many people around the Rawat Bhata area are asking and have been asking fundamental sets of questions. Workers within Rawat Bhata have been asking. They have been testifying in various places. And nuclear energy itself, as was said by Professor Rajaraman, actually the nuclear energy itself no energy can be considered completely fail-safe. Now, under those circumstances, yeah, for 30 years you may have safety, but you are producing poisonous material that you don't know what to do for thousands of years. You have situations like tsunamis which come up, you don't know when they will come. And the costs that are there to be paid are far too high as far as many people are concerned. There are alternative forms of energy. We are not saying do not produce energy. We are not saying that the poor do not want energy. Unfortunately, the politics of the country is such that the energy that is being produced is being taken away. And as we are seeing in the whole coal controversy, being usurped by certain sets of interests, and it isn't in fact reaching the poor. And here it's poor people in that area, it's poor people in other areas. They are not saying we want that particular nuclear energy and other poor people to suffer at that cost. And yes, so finally it is a political question. It is a question of some people saying this is one form of energy we want and some others saying another form we don't want. And the point is that in whose backyard you are putting that up, those people's views must be taken into consideration peacefully.
Okay. I think that's a good point, Nikhil, Professor Rajaraman. Inevitably there is politics behind it. You also mentioned it, Nikhil also is mentioning it. There is politics and there is also a major clash of ideas internationally. It's not just, I don't think it's...
May I give you the background? Yes. I've been following this.
Yes.
Internationally, after Fukushima, let's take Chernobyl, which is a big disaster. After a while, things stopped.
No, before you explain, I just want you to answer this. Why do you think that the government machinery, all the experts have not been able to convince these people?
I will tell you. And that's a good question. And it's not a technical answer I'll give you.
Yes.
It's a political failure.
Right.
A political failure of the following kind. People don't want to listen to experts. The experts somehow should have talked to people at some other level at the political spectrum.
Right.
And the local political leaders, not just the MLAs, but even further down,
absolutely,
whose confidence these people have or should have. They are the ones who should be first persuaded, and if necessary, people above them can be first persuaded, because it's a technically complex matter.
Absolutely.
These complex matters cannot be decided upon by people or even by elected people, because it's technically complex. But some people who understand them, who are trusted, like President Kalam is a man who's somehow trusted by the other people who are trusted.
But he also doesn't seem to have been able to convince
He is not
people.
because we really need to convincing to be, because nowadays nobody is trusted. That's the state of our country. So you need local politicians to whom the benefits have to be explained, and the benefits have to be given to the people who have been displaced. Possibly they had legitimate grievances going back to the time.
I was going through some
Those
of
are all legitimate.
There are corporate social responsibility things which are being thought of, and already funds have been allocated for these things. But you agree that there has been a failure in communicating.
Absolutely.
If
It's
I
not
may
the fault
intervene.
of the experts.
1 second.
It's a political failure. It's been a failure on the part of the state government also, which has agreed to it. Then
Now-
it should have
now
put
it's-
its machinery
yes.
into action. Similarly, central government should have put its MLAs, MPs, whatever leeches it has.
Sundaram, we are running out of time. My question is, we will leave the technical arguments aside. We have had enough arguments. My question is, the Madras High Court has cleared this, that now thousands of crores has been invested in this. Do you people really believe that this project can be thwarted at this stage?
I think we really believe it should be, it must be, because the people who are not ready to have this reactor in the backyard, they have their democratic rights to say so. And even Prime Minister said that the dialogue is overdone, and even the journalist that you communicated with,
yes.
Shekhar, he said. But if you look at it, why didn't the government, the NPCIL, release the safety evaluation report of the reactor when the people demanded it? When the government said that we are going in for a dialogue with the people, why didn't they allow the people's experts to come on the committee? The PMANE, the People's Movement Against Nuclear Energy, has to constitute a parallel committee of experts, which also have come up with its own report. So that report also must be looked into.
Okay. Shekhar, very, very quickly. The point which Sundaram made, very quickly, we're completely running out of time. NPCIL report, which he is talking about, has not been made available to the people.
Chief Information Commissioner has written to the Prime Minister that this report should be made public.
Is it the fact?
I'm not very sure about that because I'm not aware of that. But see, there have been two expert committees which have submitted reports. One appointed by the centre and one appointed by the state government.
Right.
The centre's committee was boycotted by the protesters, but the state committee, they attended the sittings of the state committee. It was explained to them very clearly. They asked certain questions, and that they wanted all the complete agreement between Russia and India, which the centre said we can't give because it involves a lot of confidential clauses. But what has happened is that if somebody reaches out to them at one level, the small core group that I was talking about, they will again raise the level one notch higher. So
okay.
They will make a fresh demand. So this has been escalating the demand.
Okay.
So that is what has been the reason why there has been no solution to this standoff.
Okay, Shekhar, thank you. We have completely run out of time. It's quite evident from this discussion that there needs to be a little more transparency. As Professor Rajaraman was pointing out, there seems to be a political failure in convincing the people about the efficacy of this project. Anyway, this is something that has reached a stage where it will be very difficult for the government also to go back. We will have to wait and watch how this pans out. The only thing is that hopefully the violence and all which has been perpetrated, where the killings have taken place, all these things will come to an end today and there won't be any further violence, hopefully. We'll wait and watch how these things will develop. Thank you very much. Thanks to all my guests, Professor Rajaraman, Sundaram, Nikhil Dey and GC Shekhar. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue on The Big Picture, same time tomorrow.